The following program contains scenes and language of a frank and explicit nature. Discretion is advised.
That's danceable music right there.
Oh, Heidi, it's good to see. You're not Heidi.
I'm not Heidi.
Whoa.
You're not Shannon.
I'm not Shannon. Hi, Gina. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. We have both seemingly lost our co-host this week, but it actually worked out.
Welcome to 50 States of Reform Radio.
Yay! All right, yay! Here we are. This is the way it should be. This feels better.
Right? I kind of like it.
And Shannon and Heidi can have their own.
But could you imagine the two of them together?
Nothing would get done.
Oh my God.
Nothing would get done.
I think that's
Let's do a quick impression of how the show would be. Just like this.
Can I say something?
No, conspiracy bullshit. Nothing's real, but everything is real. Gina, that would be funny. We should actually have them do a show together.
Oh my God.
What if it's better than what we do, though? What if it's better? Let's not. I don't want to risk it.
It's not going to be better. It's just going to be different, but it's going to be good.
What if it's better, though? What if they become the new Rogan?
Oh my God.
Heidi and Shannon.
Well, then you know what? We're going to take credit for it because we thought of it. So we're going to get something out of it.
We are here again today. This is actually ended up kind of being better. There was just you and I.
Yeah. Because
this is part 2 of our collaboration with the Lego Murders.
Yes.
Interviews with the family.
Yeah.
Which, thank you again for putting that together.
Yes, of course.
We just spoke to
the whole family.
The entire family, pretty much.
4 sisters and mom.
And it was incredible. You guys are about to see everything, but I think if we had Heidi and Shannon here, there may have been too many cooks. I mean, there was a lot of people involved, but it was really great. Got some amazing insight. Before we show people the video, any takeaways from you? Like anything that stuck with you?
It was very emotional.
It was, wasn't it?
It was really emotional.
Because we spoke to Shirley, and she's the one who she found her mother dead.
Yeah, and she's just, I mean, I've only met her for an hour, but she's just like the coolest lady.
She really is.
And the love that family has for each other, it's just, it comes through the computer screen. Like you can feel the connection that they have with each other.
Yep.
And I don't know what that's like because again, I don't have siblings, but the closeness that those 4 sisters have, and I'm sure obviously after you guys see this and watch this, you'll understand. But this I feel like has even brought them closer.
Yeah, I have 2 brothers and a sister, different parents. But I came from a family with siblings, and there's pros and cons to all of it, but they exemplify the pros.
Oh, for
a
sure.
Lot. I'm grateful that they all have each other, but it was everyone was pretty open, as you guys will see.
It's interesting to hear all the different takes on different things and how they all remember, or they're just not that they remember it differently, but where they were in their life when this all happened and what they were doing. They can tell you like exactly.
Yeah. You'll hear like
one of the sisters could tell you like to the second what was happening.
Yeah. And some of them were married, some were in high school. I mean, so it's you get completely different experiences, which is what I found really interesting.
Can't imagine going through that in high school.
Absolutely not.
And
I can imagine going through it, period.
One of them just had a baby.
Yep, a 1-month-old, and I think another one may have had like an 8-month-old or something.
Yeah, it was really interesting. But they're a great family though, nevertheless. Like they're a really awesome family, and we're gonna spend Christmas with them. So.
We all bonded very well.
Yeah.
We bonded a lot with them.
And if there's any time to join the Patreon, it would be now.
Well, that's all we'll say.
I'm just going to say that.
Well, we should do more of these collaborations. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And we can start squeezing out our co-hosts and just make this our own show, which is, because
they seem to be really busy. I mean, Heidi works a lot. Shannon works 2 jobs.
Yeah. I don't do shit, so
I don't either.
I'm pretty open.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Gina, should we get to it?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Please enjoy part 2 of our Lego murder interviews with Reform Radio and 56. Excuse me, I was talking.
I wanted to say thank you to Jenna.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Jenna. Jenna was
It's
the one
almost
that
like
put
Heidi's in the room right now.
this- That's what I felt like.
Yeah. No, thank you, Jenna. Jenna is one of our favorite longtime friends and listeners, and she's the one that kind of put this whole thing together.
Yes, she made this possible.
Oh, give me that little Lego thing.
Oh,
That's yeah.
am I gonna break
No, pick it up. Pick it up.
I don't want to break it.
Jenna just gave me this. You guys can see it, but little
Oh my god, I love it.
Lego leather face, which I'm pretty stoked about. So we have the
I can't
best.
imagine putting this
We
together.
have the best listeners. It took me 3 hours. So thank you. Enjoy this collaboration with 50 States of Madness and Rare Form Radio. And without further ado, unless you want to interrupt again.
No, I'm done.
Great. Here is part 2 of the Lego murder interviews.
Okay, welcome back to 50 States of Madness and Rare Form Radio, part 2 of our collab on the Lego murder. We were joined last time by Melanie, and now we are joined by the entire family. We have 4 sisters and mom. So welcome.
Yeah, we have Rhonda here, Melanie, Jana, and Shirley. So thank you guys very much for being here.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to start with Rhonda, and Rhonda's going to tell us her, I guess, version, or I guess all of you guys kind of saw this differently. So
Just kind of your experience around the time of the murder, I guess. And we'll kind of just ask a few questions and just want to know kind of your mindset of where you're at when it happened, how you found out, and that kind of thing.
Okay. So I was, it was February of 1991, and I had just graduated from college, but my husband was finishing his last semester. My firstborn son was, he was probably about 8 months old, 7 months old. And I was waitressing at the time. So I was waitressing, I was working at a restaurant. And it was the evening. It was actually the evening after she was murdered. And I was waitressing, and the phone rang, and somebody grabbed me. And, this was in the days of the phones with the long phone cords, right? And they're attached to the walls. And it was Melanie. And Melanie said, "Rhonda, have you heard?" And I said, "What?" And she said, "Have you heard?" And I said, "I haven't heard anything." I said, "What are you talking about?" And I'm in the middle of a shift, right? A dinner shift at a restaurant. And I pulled back into the back of the kitchen with that long cord, and I had it up against my ear. And Melanie's the one that shared with me. She says, "Mom found Grandma dead. She's been murdered. It's a homicide." And it was very surreal because I was standing with my ear to the phone in the back of the kitchen. And I looked up over, where all the chefs were working. And the news was broadcasting the murder right there on the TV.
Oh, wow.
And I could see my mother, sobbing and crying. And it was completely surreal. It was shocking. I can't say that I felt much then, other than shock and disbelief, and having my sweet sister on the phone in tears, right? Mm-hmm. I was 45 minutes away. School was 45 minutes away. So, the sisters and the family that was in Salt Lake, they'd been processing this and knew about it much earlier than I did. I was a little bit further away. Anne was in Virginia, but it was very surreal seeing the actual image of the news as I was hearing about it from my sister.
That's
imagine.
How
I heard about it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead.
That's how I heard about it. It was shocking. I finished out my shift really quickly, as quickly as I could. And a friend of mine came and picked me up and brought me home. Did you tell the people that you worked with what had just happened, or did you kind of just trying to plow through? What a great question. I told them immediately. As a matter of fact, I was on the phone, holding the phone, and I said in the back of the kitchen, I said, stop, right, to everyone. And I pointed to the TV and I said, "That's my grandma."
Oh,
wow.
And everybody looked up and paused and took it in and turned up the volume, and just really treated me with a tremendous amount of care for the next half hour until I could get shuffled out of the restaurant.
That's kind.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if I've been the bearer of bad news before. And Melanie, I'm sure that must have been a horrible phone call to make.
Yes.
Are you the one that kind of made the rounds to everybody, Melanie?
Interesting question. Just because I actually don't recall.
Wow.
I was in such a state of shock
Sure.
at the time. And I believe that the reason I was reaching out to Rhonda was looking to connect with someone who could talk to me or process with me through that shock.
Right.
So, yes.
So all the other sisters knew because you guys were all in Utah at that time? No. So you guys all found
Ann was
out
in
at different
Virginia.
times.
Mhm.
Let's go to Ann then. Ann, what was your experience on that day?
I was in Virginia and I had just had a baby and she was just a month old, just barely a month old. And my experience, I had just got my pictures back and I had just announcements out and I had talked to my grandmother and I had called her and she had actually called me and let me know she had got the announcement and talked to me and told me what a beautiful baby he was. And she actually had the announcement sitting on the table. No, she didn't tell me. My mom told me that she got the announcement and I had just sent it to her. And that's what makes me happy is that I remember getting the call and it was my mom. And my mom called me. And she called me after she found her. I don't know how long it had been, but she called me that day. And she called me and she wanted me to know that she had gotten the announcement and the announcement was on the table that I had sent my son being born. And at least in my heart, she saw Tanner, her grandson, her great grandson, I guess, or
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
That's
Great,
right.
Great grandson. Yeah.
her great grandson, and she got to see him, and that made me feel happy because
It's a very comforting feeling.
yeah, she was excited for me. She was really excited because we used to go there all the time. My husband, myself, over to her house and visit her, and when we were getting ready and packing up, and she came to his graduation from medical school and my graduation from pharmacy school, and we drove all the way across the United States to Virginia for his residency, and we used to call all the time. But I got the phone call, and actually, I mean, we used to go out to eat all the time and keep her informed everything that was going on, and I remember saying to my mom would go by her house all the time coming home from work. She would always stop by grandma's house on the way home from work before she'd come home to get dinner for all of the kids or the family at home. She had kids at home and I'm the oldest, and she'd go home to the rest of the kids at home, and she'd stop there to check on her mom because grandpa had passed away. And I said, why didn't you stop by last night? She said that she had passed away the night before. And she said she had this feeling. She actually was about ready to weren't you ready, Mom, to pull onto the street?
Williams
And
had a pizza for her.
Yeah.
Feeling needed to get home. She just had to get home, and she would stop by in the morning first thing. So yeah, but I just, when she called me and I just remember, Mom, you kind of seemed calm at the moment. Why? And I just remember thinking, how do you feel? How do you seem so calm? I was so upset. I called Jen at the hospital, and I was so upset, and I just hugged Danner to me. And I was just so glad that she got to see that announcement on the table. And I just Jed calmed me down and he said, we'll get you a ticket right now. You go home right now, be with your family, be with your sisters, and be with your.
That must have been a rough flight, I would imagine.
It was, yeah, it was hard. But I remember, I don't know, I think it was the next day. I came home immediately.
It's got to be so comforting and
baby.
right. I was gonna say it must have been so comforting in that time to have all of you sisters, so you know that you guys have such a close relationship and are able to lean on each other. And I'm sure at some point when some of you have bad days, then some of you are actually strong and and can help out in that way. Because I have no siblings, and so just to see the bond that you guys have is like really amazing.
Yeah,
Very obvious. Yeah,
we were really, really close with my grandmother.
All of us.
She did a lot for us. She was really involved with our education and everything. She was at all of our graduations. She was a very involved grandmother.
yeah, we learned in our first talk with Melanie, just we've watched some of the shows and we can do so much reading about her, but until we talked to you guys, we learned really the kind of person that she was, and it really does sound like she was a wonderful woman. So that's another thing I want to make sure that we're able to do is talk about the great parts. It's not just all the bad stuff, but I want to give you guys time to remember her fondly as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Very careful, so this is really unexpected.
Yep.
Really,
she was cautious.
Very cautious, very, very careful, this really, really unexpected.
Sure.
He was very careful. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Jana, can we ask you, what was, same kind of question, your experience, how you found out what you were up to, and just kind of the overall feeling of the day?
Sure. I remember it was a Saturday. I was still living at home. I was a senior in high school. And so Stephen and I were the two that were still at home. And
that's your brother, I assume?
Yes. So I had worked that morning. I worked up at Snowbird, and I came home from work that later afternoon, and the house was empty, and it just wasn't ever empty. And so I knew something was up, because it was just a different feel. But I went to my second job that night. I was working at a movie theater as well, and I went to work, and I'd only been there for maybe an hour or so, and Mom called. So I got the phone call from my mom, and I was right up front by the window where everyone was coming in, and her first words to me was, "Grandma was murdered." And I just was shocked. I said, "What?" And she said, "Grandma's been murdered." And I was actually working maybe 2 blocks from the home, grandmother's home. And I just hit the floor so people wouldn't see me, and I just listened to my mom, and she said, I found her this afternoon. And Mom talked a little bit about the day. She told me she'd gone that afternoon, and that she was sorry she was late in calling, that the police hadn't let her use her phone or contact anyone. So, she asked me to get a hold of my cousin, Doug, because her brother hadn't been able to get in touch with him yet. I think he was still driving back from Cedar City, if I'm correct. And Doug and I were best friends, my cousin, another grandchild. So I told her I would, and they took me upstairs, and once I could, I had someone walk me out to the car, because I didn't feel safe. I was right there, very close.
So many questions, of course. It's so fresh, and what you don't know who it was. So, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I left a message with my boyfriend at the time, who later became my husband. And I think I left a terrible message. um, but, you know, to get in touch with me or to find me, that I actually got my mother, that my grandmother had been killed. And so she went and found him. And I went to my cousin's. I went to where I knew my cousin would be and told him. And yeah, and I don't remember much from there. I just remember our friends were there and we were just in shock. And yeah, and then I was I went home. I finally went home, and you know, my boyfriend at the time came in and just stayed with me. And I think I was just scared. I was really scared and shocked. And my mom, that night, those are more my memories of seeing my mom come home, or when I got home and greeting my mom. She was she was a zombie. You know, I felt so bad because she was just so traumatized.
Of course.
And mom found her.
Mhm. And she kind of, you know, described a little bit about what she found and what happened in the day. And so, you know, my initial experiences really were just fear and wanting to take care of my mom. You know, afterwards, I couldn't sleep for months. And I was always kind of a stinker with school. I liked to skip school a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, but I couldn't sleep. And I would stay up at night because I was just so afraid of the dark and being alone.
Oh.
And I would go to school, and much like my normal, but a little bit more extreme, I would get to school and I would cross the road to my friend's house and I would sleep during the daylight.
Wow. Were you the only one in high school at the time?
No, my brother was as well. He was a sophomore, senior.
I want to ask you, like, going back to school, because this happened on a Saturday, so I imagine by Monday, people in the town, everyone knows. How did school change for you? How did it feel going back to school, knowing that people knew what had happened?
Yeah, and I had another cousin, Sarah, who was at the school at the same time, and so it was very well known. Some teachers gave me cards and things, but it was the friends or the people who didn't know me well. You know, it was just very hush hush, like you would hear the whispers.
That's what I'm wondering, if people kind of they back away, or if
they backed away. Yeah, they backed away. And until, you know, I didn't talk about it, you know. What do you say?
Right.
I think nowadays too, like in high schools, I work at a high school, and I think nowadays they have so many services that help with stuff like that are offered.
They do. I work in a middle school.
Yeah. And back then I don't know if any of that was offered.
Yeah, no, it was not, but I do know that the counselor was aware and kind of helped me through that last little bit, make up the credit from one of the class. I was like one credit short, the credit that I needed so that I could graduate on time, because, you know, I by that time was going to school more regularly. But, you know, so I would say the faculty was very caring and kind. And very lenient. But the friends and the students, and even people who didn't know me, you could always hear, you know, the talk behind you walking down.
And it's hard to know sometimes what to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I think we've all been through different trauma since, and understand that you don't know what to say.
Yeah, that's interesting. Shirley, we want to talk to you as well. And not going to ask you to recount anything, but I just kind of want to know from you, first of all, the immediate aftermath. Like, what was that experience like for you? I'm sure it was a haze, but who was your first call? What is the experience with the police, and just kind of your day after you found her?
Well, first of all, we were at the home for a long time, and I was isolated. It's really hard to talk about after all these years. I'm sorry.
Of course. Take your time, please.
And when they finally, and it was cold, I remember it was cold, and I was out on the road. The neighbor came by and gave me a hug, and that picture ended up being in the paper. And how much that meant to me, just to have somebody to hug. And then finally, after what seemed like an eternity, but police took me over to the police station, which wasn't far away, and told me I could call anybody I wanted to and let them know. And this is kind of emotional too. So the first person I called was my husband. And actually that day, we had been working on a project at work, and I was going back into work, but I hadn't seen my mom. And the night before, the night that she was killed, I went a different way home from work and picked up a pizza for her and for our family. And I just had the strongest feeling to just, I was within 2 blocks of her home, going a different way, because it was not the way that I would normally drive, with a pizza. And I had the feeling to just go home and take care of my family and see my mom in the morning. And there were 3 streets that I could pass to turn left to go up to her home. The first one I didn't pass, and I thought, this is crazy. I've got this pizza here. No, just go home, take care of your kids, see your mom in the morning. Did the same thing with the 3rd street. And then I was on my way home, and I thought, well, I'm going home. I'll see my mom in the morning. And I had called my mother every single night. She was a widow, and every night I called her. And the night before I had called her, and she said to me, she said, Shirley, what would you do if you called and I didn't answer my phone? And I said,
wow.
and that's my last conversation with her. I said, Mom, I'd get in the car and come over and see what's going on. Well, she didn't answer her phone. And I had worked literally almost the whole night on a project that we had a manual that had to be out, had to be shipped off that day, the next day when I was going into work. And I called her and she didn't answer. And I thought, and I was dead tired. And I thought, oh, she's probably gone to a movie or something with a neighbor. We didn't have the cell phones at the time. And I just talked myself into feeling like she was out with the neighbors and I would see her in the morning, and I went to bed. And I've always, well, actually, I'm grateful that I went to bed and didn't find my mother alone at night in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Yep.
That because I found her the next morning. I got up and went on my way to work, and they took me to the police station to make my phone call. And this was a while after I was supposed to have gone to work or been at work. And I called my husband, and he was a little bit upset because he didn't know where I was and he had tried to reach me. And I remember it probably wasn't as bad as I thought, but he said, Shirley, where are you? and he was mad. And
and you're like, I have a really good reason, by the way. Yeah.
I do. And I told him, and I'm sure he felt horrible. He came right over. But I made that phone call, and it was really hard. And I didn't call. The kids all got called later. I didn't call anybody else. And they said, Are you finished? Are you going to call anyone else? I said, no.
Yep.
So I waited until that afternoon to call. My brother, he found out because he was driving home from Cedar City from, 4 or 5 hour drive. And he heard it on the news. They didn't give my mother's name, but they gave our address. And so he pulled off the road, and he was traumatized. It was just tough for all of us, but I didn't call. I'm sorry, guys. I called them as soon as I could.
I think they forgive you.
Yeah.
But it was very traumatic. It was very traumatic. And I really think I was blessed to not stop at her home.
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Exactly what I was
It's
thinking.
like,
What would have happened?
I would have, that would have probably done me in. I don't think I could have handled that.
I mean, also, if you had gone, who knows at what time you would have gone, but it could have put you in danger as well. So it's
well, I
really
figured,
protective choice.
I do figure that the time that I was driving home is the time that it happened.
Yeah, that would have been.
I'm just about positive. And so I always thought for years, I thought, if only I'd have gone there, I could have stopped it. But with the intensity and the violence and the type of a crime it was, I would have been killed too. And I know I would have.
That's what I really wanted to point out, is that I hope you don't have any guilt about that, because that was whatever anymore, was inside of you, it was protecting you. That was the whole thing.
But I often, when other people go through things and they say, if only, I think about that and try to give some comfort there, because if only didn't happen, and it would have made everything a lot different.
Absolutely.
But there were a couple of things that gave me comfort afterwards, but it took a long time to feel safe. A long time to feel safe.
Yeah, that's the aftermath is just, I can't imagine all of you, like having to go to school, having to go to work, just being out, things that in your day-to-day life that a lot of us just take for granted.
And for people listening, remember, like, this guy wasn't caught for, what you said, 23 years later?
Yeah, 23.
So you guys are all going about your life, and I imagine constantly wondering, like, is he here? Is he dead? Is he in the next town over? I mean, it's a horrible, like, one of my best friends, he's a child of a murdered mother as well. And he wasn't caught. The killer wasn't caught for, I think, 30 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And this guy he's a famous guy. So he's out in public in the world all the time, always wondering, where is this guy? Is he going to find me? And I imagine that was very hard for all of you guys, just the constant wondering and frustration of, not knowing.
And the fact that you lose trust in well, your life changes in going out of a grocery store. If I have to park across the way, I wouldn't park across the way. I either parked up close or I didn't. And going home at night from work, just a short ways to my car, and not feeling safe and being afraid and those kinds of things. And that was with me. Well, hey, it still is with me.
Yeah.
I imagine you lose a lot of trust in society a bit.
Yeah. But it's kind of hard to think back about it. I mean, I wanted a light on our driveway, a motion light, and my husband was going to fix it. We got one and everything, but he didn't put it in. And I did not feel safe going into my own home when I would park in the driveway. I mean,
and that's so scary to not feel safe in your own home.
Right. And the thing is if you haven't been through it, I don't think you understand.
No, absolutely not.
I don't think you understand, because it's very, very real, and the fear. But I do remember a couple of things that gave me comfort.
What were those things? Yeah.
At my mother's funeral, one of the speakers told the family, he said, the Lord didn't take her, but he received her. Mm. And that has that calmed me down a lot. He received her. And then I remember talking to another friend who I admired more than anything in the world. And I told her, I said, one of the things I fear, or that I want to know, is that this person will be punished for what he's done. It was normally I'm not that way. But I was wishing anything bad that could happen to him would happen to him, and that he was going to be punished. And I said, I just hope that he sealed his fate. And she said to me, and her exact words, and they still ring in my ears, are, "Oh, Shirley," she said, my greatest fear is that the Lord will be just. And that gave me a lot of comfort too. So those
Mhm.
two things.
I remember hearing in one of the, I'm not sure what show it was. It was one of them that we had watched. I think it was your brother that spoke and said that he forgave him, and that you had a problem with that. And I think that that's on our podcast that myself and my friend do. We do a lot of true crime stuff, and we find that in a lot of cases that we research, that a lot of these people forgive, and some are just on the complete opposite side, something they can never do. And I feel like people that go through that, and they're forgiving for themselves.
That's the thing.
Yeah, that it's more for them, so they don't deal with all of that and have to hold that inside of them.
I always feel like forgiveness is for the person doing the forgiving.
Yeah.
Oh, it definitely is. And I've thought that for a long time. You know, I can't say that I had forgiven him, and I can't still say that I have forgiven him, but I don't think about it every day anymore. And he has sealed his fate. He's on death row, you know, and it'll all be taken care of, and it's all going to be good. But I can't really say that I care what happens to him. I remember in the hearing, we had all written letters, and I asked the judge, or him, I guess, if he had gotten the letter that I wrote, because I told him what kind of person Mother was, how forgiving she was, that she would have done anything for him and would have helped him if he'd even asked her. And I remember just saying to him, well, if you receive the letter, I have nothing more to say to you. I don't care what happens to you. And that was not very forgiving, but anyway, that's how I feel. Still feel that way.
You mentioned the death penalty, and this is a question that we asked Melanie on the last show, but I'd like to go around the room and just get all of you, and we'll start with you, Shirley, if you don't mind. I want to get your guys' opinion on the death penalty and whether it has changed. I know this guy, he didn't get the death penalty for your mom and your grandmother,
Right.
but he's on death row. What are your guys' thoughts on the death penalty, and if it has changed since, you know, she was taken from you guys? And Shirley, we'll start with you.
You know, I think the death penalty is okay. I think if it happens to him, it will probably affect me, but I don't know how. I really don't know how, because will I be glad? No, I'm not glad to see something like that happen. But is it just? I feel like it is just. He's taken a couple of lives, and it's difficult. But all I can say is I'm grateful I'm not the one that makes that choice. And whatever happens, so be it. He's paying his time, and I can't imagine that he's happy where he is.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Anne, can we get your thoughts on the same question, please?
Well, I don't like the death penalty. I wouldn't have pushed for it, but I think that he needs to be penalized for what he's done. And I'm glad that I'm glad I didn't have to make that decision. And the fact is that I didn't have to make it, and he already had that penalized for him. But like I said, I would have pushed for him to be penalized, put in prison for life or whatever, but I wouldn't have been a pusher of a death penalty. I just don't like, I'm just not that kind of person, but I definitely agree he needs to be punished. And I'm not sorry that he has the death penalty, because he did do some terrible things to some terrible people. But if I would have had to be the one making that decision, I wouldn't have placed that decision on him myself.
All right. Thank you. Rhonda, same question, please.
So, like my mom and my sister, I was grateful that the choice wasn't on my shoulders, right, as to what the sentence would be. But you know, I'm a therapist and a mother, and a mother of many stepchildren as well. And I have a son who's been in the system as a teenager. I have stepchildren who've been in the system. I'm in relationship right now with a beloved, wonderful man who is a convicted felon for a financial crime. And at the time, I was married to someone whom I didn't know it at the time, but he had a criminal history, although it's unconvicted. And, you know, I, like Anne, I don't like the death penalty from the perspective of another murder, right? It mimics the crime. But it's not a crime, right? It's a privilege and an honor to protect. And I think that we have an obligation and a duty to protect society from individuals who are clearly demonstrating that they don't have the capacity to live in alignment with the types of rules and mutual respect that keep us all safe and operating, you know, in a civilized way. So I'm one who seeks more of a compassionate accountability, and I'll share a little bit what I think about that.
Please,
it doesn't mean I believe he deserves compassion. Certainly not deserved, but I feel like compassion. I experience compassion and understanding as a human right, perhaps even a universal human need. So for me to look to him and try to understand the trauma that he went through that brought him to this place where he would be willing to do something so psychopathically violent, that part is important to me. And I'm okay with the death penalty. Somebody else penalized him for that, and I'm okay with that. And I can feel compassion for whatever brought him to that space and horror at what he did to my grandma, and feel really compassionately okay that a judge, you know, sentenced him to death, and I'm okay with that. I just think that I've just learned, you know, energetically in my heart, the way that I relate to other people is important. And I want him in jail. I think he's in the right space. I'm okay with him being murdered as well by society. That's the law, and I'm at peace with that. And at the same time, I think that that the current options in our system are insufficient.
I would agree with you there.
In moving forward,
Yeah.
I would say that the whole system needs to be, you know, revamped in a way that really deals with the trauma that occurs in early stages that brings a person to this type of psychopathic violence. It's horrifying. It's a living nightmare, and it's just what we're doing is not working.
I'm so happy that you brought up compassion. It's such a key thing for obviously children and people in general, but children especially. I interviewed somebody else who was a convicted murderer, and he was talking about his childhood, and his parents never showed him any compassion
Yes.
or empathy his whole life, and it took him being in jail for 8 years before his therapist is the first person that ever showed him any kind of compassion
Right.
and empathy. And he's like, I never knew what that was like before. And as soon as he was shown that kind of support and compassion, he said his violent tendencies kind of just started to melt away because he knew what it felt like. Doesn't forgive, like you said, doesn't forgive anything that happened. But
Yes.
in society, we can start making changes earlier by showing compassion to people and children, and
Yes.
you know,
and seeking to understand. And I want to clarify one thing with my mother, because I honor and respect her. I don't feel forgiving towards this man, but I feel compassionate, and I know that there's something there, right? I know that there's trauma there, and you know, he's mimicking and remodeling what he saw done. But I do want to say this with my mom. With regards to my mom, I really honor and respect her right to not forgive and not be forgiving. The trauma that he put her through when she found my grandmother's body. And I want to clarify that, and my sisters will vouch for this, our mother is the most compassionate person. She's hugely, deeply compassionate. She's a wonderful woman. She has a beautiful heart. She got that from her mother. But I love that my mom hasn't forgiven him, and I hope she doesn't.
And also, I think I can safely say that you guys also got your heart from your mom as well.
Yeah,
you guys all
100%.
seem like you're definitely from the same family. It's nice to see.
Well, one
yeah.
thing on that, just very briefly, is my mother was a foster parent or a shelter parent the whole time we were moving up. So growing up, so my mother and father brought in children who were taken out of domestic violence situations. And they would get called in the middle of the night with 2 children that had just been extricated from a home because of violence. And we would wake up in the morning and 2 little kids would be there that were now going to be our siblings for a few weeks. And we rolled through that over and over again. So mom really taught us a lot of compassion and for people who were in difficult situations. And I
Good
think
for
that's
you.
where we all
Good
got
for
it.
you.
It's huge.
That's a big thing.
Thank you, Rhonda, for that. Melanie, I remember you were, if I remember right, you were sort of against the death penalty, correct?
Very much in alignment with my sisters.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I will say one thing. I recently found out 3 weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago, you can go online. He did file his final petition for his last and final petition for what do they call it, for stay or something. So I do know that it is arriving. His, the
Wow.
date or whatever has not been set, but he did appeal, and it is his final and last appeal. All the other appeals have been denied, and so this is his final appeal.
This is not for parole. This is just for a stay of execution, right?
That is right. Yes. Okay. And then I also know that Kara Willett, the wife that was present at the time, is up for parole or probation.
That's
or
right.
Parole,
We talked
or
about
release. That. And she has set up a GoFundMe page.
Let's give the link. I'm just kidding.
No, please, no.
No, we're not going to.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Unless it goes to our family.
That's fine. That's fine. That makes more
Absolutely.
sense. Jana, just to wrap up this question here, just same thing. Just your thoughts on the death penalty as it pertains to you.
I don't know that I'm either for nor against it. I'm glad I mirror my sisters. I was not the one to have to make that decision, because I don't know that I could put that on my hands. I would, probably lean more towards life in prison, because I want them here to suffer as long as possible.
I agree. Yeah.
I'm for that.
But I do not feel like his punishment is worse than his crime. Yeah. And so I'm okay with that. Even at the sentencing, my echoing concerns when we had our final words were, I was just so concerned about his next generation, about his kids and what he had done to them, and them being present at this murder, and what that he had taken their lives from them, not just my grandmother's life from us, but that he took his children's life from them in the raising. And so I was, I think that's always been more of my focus. And so I think what would the death penalty to him do to them versus life in prison? And, sometimes maybe the death penalty would be easier for them.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I just had this conversation with somebody and I said, sometimes I feel like that's the easy way out. Like, so you just get to die and go away from all of this. And I think that it depends on, what does your day-to-day look like? What does your day-to-day life in prison look like? Because I know they get 3 meals a day. They have access to the internet. They have cell phones. They get to go to the gym. They get, they get schooling. They get all of this. So, in that case, they might be living better off than you and I. But
that's the struggle I've heard. Like my friend who, his mom was killed. He's like, I don't like that this guy gets to like crack jokes with people. Yeah. He has friends. He gets to think about what he did over and over. He gets to relive it, whether he enjoys it or not. Mm-hmm. So there's arguments both ways, and I guess the answer is there's no perfect solution, obviously, right? No one's going to be happy if he's dead. Okay, if he lives forever, okay. There's pros and cons with both, so there's no perfect punishment.
Yeah. I did have a question. I think Melanie, you had, when we were speaking, you had said that at one point that one of your sisters thought that it might have been an ex-boyfriend or an ex-husband.
That was me.
It was
Rhonda.
Oh, Rhonda. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't see who said that. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I could. So, the timeline is important here in what I'm going to share. 91 is when Grandma was killed. And by the way, I do want to say, for a long time, I couldn't use the word murder or killed without sort of judging myself as a drama queen, right? I felt like it was dramatic. And I was really uncomfortable.
Murder is a dramatic.
It is. And that's the beauty of it is, once I processed it and realized that it wasn't me, it's that the word is taboo, right? Saying that Grandma died or was killed, it just doesn't reflect the level of, again, psychopathic violence that was there. It was a homicide. She was murdered. And so I just wanted to introduce that it's really important to me that we use that word. So she was murdered in 1991. In 1995, my husband that I was married to at the time committed a crime. And it was a violent crime. I guess it depends on how you look at violence, but it was moral turpitude. It was a crime of moral turpitude against a child. And I did not find out about it for 2 years. And when I found out about it, we went to counseling for 3 years. I strove to save the marriage and to bring about compassionate accountability. And what I learned is, without accountability, a person they don't change. I mean, they're on that same path. And they go down that same path that their choices have brought them to. So I divorced in 2000 and was moving forward in my life. But between 2000 and 2004, I experienced so much psychological violence from my ex-husband in the legal system with child support. Trying to hide the crime that he had committed, right? Trying to punish me, to keep me silent, to keep me quiet, and coming against me and my boyfriend at the time with FBI investigations, police investigations, IRS audits. I mean, I've been, the recipient of his psychological piece. And so I was sitting there once watching TV, and it was a crime show. And the victim had the pillow placed over their face. And I turned to Todd, my partner, who I've been with now for 20 years. And I said, "Oh, that's the way they found Grandma." And he said, "Ah." And he said, "Did they ever find out who that was?" And I said, "No." I said, they're sure that it was somebody who knew her or was associated with her because she let him in and they covered her face so that they wouldn't feel bad about it once she died. And Todd said, "Wow, so they think that somebody actually knew her?" I said, "Yeah, they were thinking it was somebody in the family or a friend and both of us at the same time went, and we looked at each other and went, and named my ex-husband. And it's the first time that it occurred to me, right? So this is 13 years after Grandma was murdered, but it was 4 or 5 years after I had divorced. And 10 years after he had committed his crime that he was never held accountable for. And it went through me like intuition. And it wasn't, right? It wasn't correct. I even ended up getting his fingerprints. And in a legal experience that we were having, I got one of the cups, sent it to the police. And once they got his fingerprints, he was cleared. And then I knew he wasn't.
So, but in your bones, you knew
in my
it was
bones,
him
I
for a
believed
moment.
it. In my bones, I at least was completely, authentically open to the possibility that I had married and bore 4 children with a man who murdered my grandmother.
Oh my God.
Did you discuss, did any of the sisters, did you guys hear about this or your
I
mom?
called Jana right off, and Melanie, and I believe I called you too. I called all my sisters for, am I crazy? Is this valid?
What were your guys' thoughts when she called you? Let's start with Jana. What was, when she called you and posed that, what was your thought?
Well, I knew what he had done, and I knew he wasn't a trustworthy person. And but I don't know that I had a judgment. I just remained to see what the detectives would say. And I wasn't, because I hadn't been deeply involved with him like Rhonda had, but I also knew that he couldn't be trusted. I'd seen him in the years since, and his hollow eyes and he's not a good man. I just felt like, okay, well, if you feel that way, let's take it. Let's take it to the detectives and let's find out. Which we did. Rhonda and I, she lived near me at the time, and the detectives came with pictures of the scenes, and she and I were interviewed by them, and it was the first time they showed us all of the pictures taken that day. And so we saw.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And I asked the detective at the time, I said, could he have gone from this crime to this crime? Is that an illogical leap? And the detective said, no, it is not an illogical leap. That is something that we see. And so then we just remain to see, what came of that investigation. Yeah.
Wow, that's heavy.
Yeah. Was he aware, your ex-husband, Rhonda, was he aware that he was under suspicion for this, or?
So he was not aware that he was under suspicion until a friend that I had confided in, very confidentially, right, and asked for confidentiality, actually shared it with another individual. And so it got to, it became knowledge that I suspected him actually in the legal court hearing that I was going through. So he did know, right? He did know at that point in time. And he was furious.
From what you said, he doesn't sound like the kind of guy that would understand that or take it very well.
No, he did not take it well. And it was interesting because for a time it shed question on my reliability in court, because I suspected that he might be the one that killed my grandmother. That turned out not to be true, but I know for a fact that he committed the other crime that he's not been convicted of. And so it put me in this strange space, and I think gave him some good ammo for a while.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we appreciate you guys doing this so much. I know this is not easy for you guys to talk about even all these years later. I know I'm sure brings up some emotions that are just, things get better, I'm sure, over time, but it still is never easy to talk about.
We appreciate it very much.
Yeah.
I find this really healing, though, in the space of all of my sisters and my mother.
Oh, absolutely. I'm
right?
sure.
We talk one-on-one about these things, but together like this is unique.
Especially just to keep her memory alive and talk about the good times,
Yep.
She sounds like she's just the coolest grandma.
No, you guys have a good bloodline, and you guys are very, very close. I'm curious if you guys feel like this horrible event did, in a weird way, bring you closer as a family. Have you guys found that to be the case at all?
I could address that.
Please.
At least a portion of that. It's been really hard with our extended family. My uncle's boy had some problems and could get pretty violent or mean, or I saw him whip his brother one time with a big whip, and just little things like that. And the week before Mother died, she said that she was tired of how some of the handouts that she had to give willingly, but it made me think about him when she died. And in my mind, I had to have something that made sense. Nothing made sense with this. There was just, she wasn't the kind of person anyone would hold any animosity towards. And I really and truly myself believed it could have been a relative.
Right.
Right. Yeah, we spoke about that when we spoke with Melanie. And
Did you?
yeah, and it sounded like she was helping him out quite a bit financially.
Well, she did help him, and he needed it, and I would have helped him too. What was it? He did call me after Mother died, and I hear the conversation in my mind. He said, "Shirley, I'm not calling to say I'm sorry, but I'm calling to say that there are things in that home that belong to me, and I want to be there when you clean it out." Those are his exact words. Never forgotten them. And that
That's
just sent
rough.
Yeah.
a chill through me,
Yeah.
because I thought, wait a second. And consequently, our family became divided, not verbally or anything, but just we had one side of the family and another side of the family. This couldn't have been, and this had to have been. And so when it was resolved, it was wonderful. But there's so many guilt feelings and times where we should have been there for one another and weren't. And I just regret that. But on the other hand, how do you know when you've been through something so horrible?
Everyone
Yeah.
handles these things differently,
Differently, yeah.
and some people can turn the page within weeks. Some people they'll never be okay. It's important not to try not to criticize people for how they handle stuff,
Mhm.
but sometimes it does hurt you as well. But
Especially in that
everyone's just so
moment,
different.
like dealing with something like this is, everybody grieves differently, but this in itself is, when you're talking about murder, it's just something so different. It's not a natural death, So I
That's true.
think, you can't really judge anybody for the way that they go about those things, because that's hard and everybody is so different.
Everybody navigates the ocean of trauma differently.
Yeah.
And I regret with what we've been through that it hasn't really been talked about or resolved, the feelings that we had on either side.
Oh,
And we're distant, and it's unfortunate because Mother would have never wanted it that way. She was the one that brought the family together.
It's never too late to try if you guys
Yeah.
feel like you might want
And that
to,
is true. That is true.
Yep.
May I say one thing about
Please.
sisters and my mom and dad? So Rhonda here, and you asked about, did it bring us closer? By my observation, and I shared a little bit about our upbringing, but we were very close as young children, and we were raised in what I can say as from the perspective of a professional in a very safe, overall, very safe and peaceful home, right? We had trauma that was going on in the family, but that didn't sort of flush itself out until later with an extended family member. However, we were, that safe and peaceful, beautiful space resulted in raising 4 quite innocent and ignorant and deeply loving young women, right? And my brother as well. But this was a really rude awakening. It sort of slapped me out of my innocence and my ignorance. And I know that it did the same for my sisters, my brother, my mom, my dad. And I would say that it has brought us closer because it sort of opened our eyes, right, to the possibilities of what's out there, to psychopathy, to the things that we didn't experience when we were younger in a very safe and protected home. And I would say because of that, we're more authentic, we're more available. There's a deeper level of intimacy between all of us. And the love for our mother and her grief, it was so profound. I mean, I just can't even, I know that the girls and my brother would agree, but our mother suffered so horribly.
Yes.
And the love that came through everyone, I think definitely bound us and brought us closer.
Beautiful. Well, I'm grateful that you guys have each other.
Yeah. And you can see the love.
Yeah. It's pretty tangible.
Beautiful. Well, I know you guys need to run, but I mean, like Gina said,
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for giving us your time. And I'm happy we got the tech side of it worked out.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
No, it's
No,
fine.
don't be sorry.
It's fine. Well, good luck to you all. And again, really appreciate your time very much.
Yes. Thank you so much for this.
I want to say one thing.
Please.
Yes.
My Rhonda talked about my mom suffering, and I was the one who lived in the home. And so, it was months and months and months. And she did. So I had a very different, end of high school and first years. And then my sisters did about my grandma's there and support. But I had firsthand really watching my mother and the struggles and the depression and the deep, deep grief. And I recall the stress was so great that she lost like dollar-sized chunks of her hair where the scalp would be completely not even shaved. It was completely bald. And if you lifted her hair, and I mean, so it was psychological trauma, it was physical trauma, it was
Spiritual. Even.
Huge. Her recovery kind of coming back to us. She was very rightfully so. I think Melanie and I especially can attest to some very deep grief that we've both experienced. And it was a long time coming out of that fog for good reason of the grief, years and years. And she was still always there for us. But I know from my own grief experience how hard that would have been, because she was about my age when this happened. And she really was still there for us. And I can't imagine the hollowness she must have felt in doing that. She had the love, but I know I know that you would feel her spirit come back.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's hard to have to go through all that and still be a mother.
Yeah.
Still be present. That's
You still have your obligations, no matter how hard you're hurting, you still have your obligations.
And PTSD is a real
for all of us.
That denies us all, right? And that's one of the big harms in this type of violent crime is how many people are, denied a normal lifetime until they can process all of that. And even for years, it changes you forever. It changed me forever. I know it changed my mother forever.
Has everyone done therapy? Has that been a part of everyone's life?
I've done tons of it. And now I do it, but especially in relationship to the trauma I experienced with my ex-husband, but I went through many, many years of therapy and have come out on the other side, and I'm a therapist now, but I really wanted to attest to, again, shoot out compassionate accountability or compassion and understanding of the grief process and what it takes to recover and actually be in your body again.
Yep.
Yeah.
And feeling your feelings and having permission to be authentic and feel what you feel and say what you say and be
I'm
back.
sure you're just numb for so long.
Yes.
And then you just get used to feeling that, and that becomes your norm,
Yeah, that's just you now. Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's the risk.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's the risk.
Well, Anne, Rhonda, Melanie, Jenna, and Shirley, thank you guys
Thank you
so
so
very
much
much
for
for your
this.
time and for kind of opening the wound again. It's inspiring to us to see you guys as a family. So thank you for that. And just thank you for giving us your time very much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you
Keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You guys are doing a great
You guys
job.
are doing a great job. Seriously.
And pass along those genes to everybody that you can.
Definitely.
We've
The
done
world
plenty
needs
of
more
that.
people.
Very good.
The world needs more people like you guys for sure.
Well, take care, guys.
Thank you
Thank
both
you
so much.
Okay.
Thank
bye.
you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, ladies.
This is Lola, and I'm here to tell the world to stop being such pussies and listen to Rare Form Radio.